let's talk about some of the expected topics from history, art and culture. Now, one of the important things that we need to understand is the Jerenga Pothar and the Dhekiajuli town in Assam. Now, Dhekiajuli has been associated with Quit India movement. In the Jerenga Pothar, which lies in the Sivasagar town, is important because the Ahom Princess Joymoti belongs to this region, and it was one of the seats for the Ahom kingdom during that time. She is known to have sacrificed her life for her husband, who was who basically turned into a king at a very untimely age, and later on this was the place where she was tortured to death, and therefore Jerenga Pothar is in news. The next is the region is also known for the Napuki tank and the Pohugar, which is a natural zoo located here. Also, the Joysagar tank is one of the major tanks being built by Swargadev Rudra Singh, including the Vishnu Dhol temple. Also, Dhekiajuli town is important. Now, this is the region where the youngest martyr of India's freedom fighter is attributed to, and she was a 12-year young Tileshwari Barua. Tileshwari is Barua's location, and this is also known as Mrityu Bahini or the death squads, which have widely participated, including the women and the children in Dhekiajuli. So, Dhekiajuli is part of the Quit India movement, very important. The next is Pagri Sambhal movement. Now, this was started as part of the Sanyukt Kisan Morcha, and it was in the honor of Ajit Singh. Ajit Singh founded this movement in 1907, and there were three important agitations that were raised against the British government for agriculture. One was Punjab land alienation, the next was Punjab land consolidation, and the last was the Doab Act. This was one of the areas where the Ajit Singh, who was the uncle of Bhagat Singh, basically started to work on, and there was the Bharat Mata Society which was formed, and few of the members have been listed here which are important. Now, Ajit Singh has been an inspiration, and as mentioned, he launched the Bharat Mata Society and the Bharat Mata Book Agency, which was part of the Bharat Mata Society. He was founder of the Indian Revolutionary Society, Bharatiya Krantikari Sangh, and along with Lala Lajpat Rai, he was exiled to Burma. So his works have been indeed very important. The next is Mannathu Padmanabhan. Now, his death anniversary has been celebrated recently. He belonged to Kottayam in Kerala, and he was known as the Madan Mohan Malviya of Kerala. He started initially as a teacher in the government primary school, and later on practiced in the courts as a magistrate. He started two important movements which took under his ideas. Those are the Vaikom movement and the Guruvarur movement. The Guruvarur Satyagraha was a non-violent satyagraha, and that was mainly in the Thrissur district to uplift the depressed class. Similarly, the Vaikom Satyagraha was not a non-violent protest, but that was for the entry of the depressed class. And he also, Vaikom was a part of Travancore, and he also established the Nair Service Society. He took part in various agitations along with the C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, and he became the member of Travancore Legislative Assembly later on. The next is Sri Narayana Guru. Sri Narayana Guru was born again in Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. So after Mannathu, Sri Narayana Guru is another important figure from Kerala. He originally belonged to Izawa caste, but he considered the concept of bringing everyone at par, so removing the caste barriers. He learned the various Veds, Upanishads, and the yoga and the philosophies. He believed in the slogan, one caste, one religion, and one God, and that was the slogan that was propounded by him. He focused on equality, removing all kinds of inequality, and organizing Alev Aditya Ashram, which was the first kind of event being reported in India, and this was to counter the conversion of Izawa community. He has various literary works in his name which have been mentioned, and he was one of the major proponents of Advait Vedanta. Advait Vedanta focused on non-duality and was initially started by Adi Shankaracharya. His contribution to national movement and science have been very important, talking about education, cleanliness, trade, handicraft and so on. The next is Mahatma Ayyankali. Mahatma Ayyankali was a social reformer, and he was again from Kerala, worked for the upliftment of caste, upliftment of Dalits and against the lower caste. So he focused on the idea that Dalits could join the school, they could walk freely on the public roads, and he formed a Sadhu Jan Paripalana Sangadam, which was mainly for the depressed class, and his works have been important for the same. The next is Ravan's aviation route has been discovered, and this has been given in one of the projects which is known as the King Ravan and the ancient domination of aerial routes now lost. His flying machine was known as Dandu Morna, and that was not only used to fly within India but also in the region of Southeast Asia. His work have been considered significantly, and Sri Lanka has recently named Ravan 1 as the first satellite being launched in 2019. The Sinhala Buddhist community is important, which is one of the major followers of Theravada Buddhism, and therefore one of the major sects. Now, Theravada Buddhism is one of the ancient and the closest form that developed in the regions of Sri Lanka and spread to the nearby regions of Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and in India. B.R. Ambedkar and his followers were focusing on the Theravada Buddhism side. The next is Khudai Khidmatgar movement. Now, this was started by Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He was one of the Pashtun freedom fighters from Northwest Frontier Province, Northern Indian. He opposed the concept of partition, and he wanted a kind of reorganization. So, man started to come in bright red shirts, however, women in black garments, and that was the part of it. There was a Kiza Khafni Bazaar massacre that happened in 1930, and the day after the Khan was arrested, there were protests which started in this bazaar area in the Peshawar. He was one of the major Pashtun leaders. He was also known as Frontier Gandhi by Mahatma Gandhi, and since he was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi, he was also known as Frontier Gandhi, sorry. So he joined the Khilafat movement in 1920, and the idea was to bring in better ties between Indian Muslims and the Turkish Sultan. He was awarded Bharat Ratna and became the first foreigner to receive this award. Later on, Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa also received this award. The next is Indus Valley, what people used to eat. So there was a lipid residue analysis that was done in the pottery, from the potteries in Uttar Pradesh, Alamgir area, in the regions of Haryana, the Rakhigir, the Bhiwani area, and it was found that most of the pots showed indicators that milk was one of the major consumptions. So cattle and buffalo were abundant. Nearly 50 to 60% animal bones were from cattle and buffalo. Sheep and goat were only 10%. 90% of the cattle were kept alive in Harappa until the age of 3 to 3.5 years. The females were mainly used for dairy, males were used for the purpose of traction. Indus Valley civilization, how it came into existence and how it collapsed, when it started and when it ended, had been given here. Some of the major centers of Indus Valley civilization, which we have also discussed in our NCERT lectures, history lectures, are important. Coming on to the urban features, agriculture. First thing to cultivate, that was cotton. Great Path was one of the major features here. Granaries, two-storied houses, pottery, religious beliefs known by the Pashupati seal were important. The next was dairy production. As we said, there were indicators and the shreds of pottery that were seen in the archaeological sites. Kotala Patli in Gujarat is one of the significant sites, and the indicating lines showing the milk boiling and the consumption of milk has been indicated. The porous pots actually absorbed liquid from the food, and that's helped in preserving the food molecules such as fat and protein, and this could be dated through the C16 and C18 analysis, which showed that there was significant use of dairy. Now, Indus Valley, there was a close linkage of give and take between other civilizations, mainly Egypt, Mesopotamia and Chinese civilization. Some of the major centers of Harappa civilization have been given here. As we know, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are the two major centers. Besides that, Kalibangan, where you have the black Bengals which are found in Rajasthan, Lothal, Surkotra and Dholavira in Gujarat. Dholavira is one of the centers known for water harvesting and water harnessing system. The next is Lakshmi Devi Temple in Hoysala. Now, Lakshmi Devi Temple is one of the major temples that is witnessed, and this is one of the temples which is mainly devoted to goddess Kali, and this has been seen in Karnataka. Now, mainly developed with soapstone in the Kadambanagar style, and the mandap is the square and open shape. It also has the avatar of Shiv and Bhairav. So, those are again important centers that have been seen here. It is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site and the Archaeological Survey of India, and the architectural style has been mentioned here. Very important. We have covered this separately in our class on NCERT Indian art and culture section, so you can just check out the playlist on art and culture for the details. The next is JP Narayan and Nanaji Deshmukh Jayanti. Both of them had an important impact on the India's national movement. Now, JP Narayan was influenced by the Marxist philosophy, mainly the Gandhian philosophy, and Nanaji Deshmukh was influenced by Lokmanya Tilak and his nationalist philosophy. Their contributions have been significant. JP Narayan contributed to Bhudan Yagna movement of Vinoba Bhave and reallocation of the landless. There was a kind of total revolution that was started, and Nanaji Deshmukh started the first rural university in India, the Chitrakoot Gramodaya Vishwavidyalaya in Chitrakoot, which is one of the major developments, and actively participated in Vinoba Bhave's Bhudan Andolan. The next is inscriptions from Renati Chola. Now, Renati Chola was the region of the present day Kadapa district, and it is one of the areas where Nandivarman was one of the most ancient families, and this was belonging to the Chola dynasty. Usually we see dolomite, slab and shale mudstone inscriptions which are found here. Chola dynasty has been an impactful and efficient dynasty which is witnessed here. Now, Kaveri Delta, Chola Mandalam have been some of the major areas where this was ruled. With the project Digital Pumpura, which was launched by DST, and this was to create the Chola dynasty port city of Pumpuhara in Tamil Nadu, has been important. The next is the Moplah uprising. Now, Moplah uprising has been important. Two important events which were witnessed. One was the wagon tragedy and the other was the Moplah rebellion, and this was by Ali Mushiar and Ahmed Hazi. Both of them were among the major martyrs which were seen. Now, this was one of the elements that was against the Khilafat agitation, and it was a non-cooperation movement which was mainly launched by INC in 1920. The Moflas were affected by the anti-British sentiments, and this created a further round of agitation. So there was an incidence of wagon tragedy which was witnessed, and then we had the Khilafat movement which was again one of the major movements supported by INC which was seen. The next is the Ahom kingdom. The Ahom kingdom, as we have seen the Joymoti, the Princess Joymoti and the story of Joymoti. This is one of the major things and the major dynasties in the history of Assam. The book named as a History of Assam, written by Edward Cade, has been important, and this focused on the Chaolumg Sukapha. Sukma, along with his people, reached the region of Brahmaputra and started to settle in Assam and founded this dynasty. So, Ahom had a treaty which was signed by the Treaty of Yendobo, and this was one of the major political systems of the Bhuyans that were witnessed. Later, Sanskrit works were translated into local languages and the land was granted. The Buranjis are the historical works which are written first in the Ahom and thereon in the Assamese language. The next is Joseph Mar Thoma, and this is one of the major things that we have witnessed. He is considered as one of the major figures of the Mar Thoma church, and his 90th birthday has been celebrated. His foundation day and the 12 principles of Jesus Christ, known by the name of Apostle, has been founded by Saint Thomas or Mar Thoma, and therefore important, and this is one of the oldest denominations of Christianity. from Malabar, which has been located in Kerala in the Thiruvalla area. The next is the Thola Pavakotu. Now this is where the shadow puppet games are being played, and which is one of the most ancient forms of Kerala figures, where Aryan and Dravidian cultures are being mixed, and it is also known by various other names. There are various play themes on which it is being based, and the shadow puppetries from other regional parts have been named here. We have covered a separate lecture on puppetry in India, very important, so go through that carefully. The next important is Guru Ravidas Jayanti. Guru Ravidas Jayanti, now Guru Ravidas was the 14th Guru, and he was the 14th century Guru, and he was one of the major followers or the believers of the Bhakti movement. His idea was one God and kind of no biasness, and his poems got included later in Guru Granth Sahib. He started with the Bhakti movement, and there was the developments that were not only seen in the north but as well as in the south India. The next is the Anubhava Mantapa. Anubhava Mantapa in Kerala, in Karnataka, is one of the major centers. The new Mantap, the Anubhava Mantap, is a 6-floor structure, and that focuses on the Baheshwar's philosophy. The idea is that there would be the Shivaling and a large pedestal surrounding it. The Chalukya style of architecture has been adopted to bring this structure, and Basveshwara was one of the major philosophers and reformers. He was also against the caste and the religious discrimination, and on his name the Basave Jayanti has been celebrated. The next is the revival of Monpa handmade paper. Now Monpa handmade paper is originating from Arunachal Pradesh and has been revived by the Khadi village industries. It is one of the fine textured paper made by the Mong Shunglu locally and is an integral part of the tribes of Tawang. The bark of local tree called as Shenu Sheng is used, and this is also having known for its medicinal value. Now this paper has been typically growing in the Tawang district of Arunachal Pradesh and has been a part of the local customs of each household in Tawang. There have been various programs for empowering the local Kumhars and the local architects which have been initiated. The next is Jallikattu. Now this is a bull taming sport which was initially banned, later on again given notification by Supreme Court, and still there are cases pending. But the idea is similar kind of sports have been seen in other parts as well. So Kamala in Karnataka is another sports. This is one of the sports which is celebrated close to Pongal, and we have also ban on similar sports in Maharashtra, Punjab and Andhra Pradesh. The next is the Lingaraj Temple in Odisha. Now Lingaraj Temple, the approval for the peripheral area development is known as the Ekam Ravan Kshetra, and that lies in the region of Bhubaneswar. Now this is the part of the redevelopment plan where various things would be taken into account, and the list of those have been mentioned here. The Ekram plan talks about a heritage development and developing as a UNESCO heritage site. The Lingaraj Temple is referred to as Swayambhu or the self-originated Shivaling. It is one of the very largest temples in Bhubaneswar, believed to be built by Somvanshi King Yayati I, and there have been 4 sections: the Garbhgriha, the Yagnashala, the Bhog Mandap and the Natyashala. So those were part of the Lingaraj temple, and the redevelopment plan has included these further. So those were some of the important topics that you must cover. To highlight those, Sri Narayana Guru, Mahatma Ayyankali, Joseph Mar Thoma, and then we have the Dhekiajuli town in Assam, which are some of the major things, and the Monpa handmade paper are some of the major things that you need to know. We would be covering many more expected topics before your prelims. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.